Commander Vesh sat in the station director's office, trying very hard not to look like a warrior who had just been defeated by 3 small children. His mate Kira sat beside him with the same expression of military stoicism cracking at the edges. They were Crothari, apex predators from a world where strength meant survival. And right now they were losing a war against opponents who barely reached their knees. "That is the 7th babysitter in 2 months," Station Director Orhak said, tapping his data pad with one of his many fingers. The Quellan administrator looked tired, which was impressive considering his species barely showed emotion. "Say the last one, that Vargathi female filed a formal complaint," she said, and I quote, "Your cubs tried to establish a dominance hierarchy by attempting to mount her head." Vesh felt his face grow warm beneath his fur. "They are just they are spirited." "Spirited," Kira echoed, though her voice suggested she knew exactly how weak that sounded. "Commander, your cubs roared at a trained combat veteran until she fled your quarters in tears." "Tears? A Vorgathi warrior. Those people eat rocks for breakfast." Orhax leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his bulk. "Your children are wonderful, I am sure, but they are also, how do I put this delicately? Absolute terrors." "They are cubs," Vesh said defensively. "Crothari cubs are naturally dominant, aggressive, testing boundaries. This is normal for our species. They need someone who understands predator behavior, someone who will not be intimidated by cub behavior, right?" "Yes, completely normal," Orhak said in a tone that suggested it was anything but. "Which is why I have been researching species who might be better suited to handle your spirited offspring. And I think I found someone." Kira perked up, hope flickering in her amber eyes. "You have someone who can handle Zeph, Nala, and Rook. Someone who will not run away screaming." "Well, I have someone who just transferred to the station. She has experience with, let me check my notes, difficult children. Multiple species came highly recommended from the terraform station out in the Cygnus sector." Orhak scrolled through his data pad. "Only problem is she is human." Bess blinked. "Human? Those soft little prenates? The ones who cry when you speak too loudly? The ones who bring emotional support animals to space stations?" Kira added, her tone skeptical. "Those human. I know it sounds counterintuitive," Orhak said, holding up his hands. "But hear me out. Humans are weird. They are pack-bonding species with surprising resilience. And this one, Zorninchin, she specifically requested to work with difficult cases. Her words, not mine. She said, boring children made her, and again I want to claw her own eyes out." "A human said that?" Bess tried to process this information. Every human he had met on the station seemed so fragile. "They apologized for existing. They said please and thank you for things that did not require gratitude. They made small talk about the weather in a climate-controlled environment. She starts tomorrow. I already sent her your address." Orhak smiled, which on Aquilin looked vaguely threatening. "You are meeting her at 1800 hours. Try not to scare this one away." "Yes, I am running out of options. And the next step is boarding school on Kthara Prime, which I understand is well intense." Bess and Kira exchanged glances. Boarding school, where cubs learn to hunt, live prey, and fight for rank, where weakness meant sleeping in the cold dens. They had met at boarding school. It had been character building. But their cubs were so young, barely 4 solar cycles old, 3 cycles old, and 2 cycles old, respectively. "We will meet the human," Vess said finally. "But if she cannot handle them, we want a refund on the placement fee." 1,800 hours arrived with the kind of dread usually reserved for combat deployments. Vash and Kira had locked the cubs in their sleeping quarters, which was less about protecting the human and more about preventing immediate chaos. They could hear Zay roaring at the door, Nala hissing, and Lil Rook making those chittering sounds that meant he was plotting something. The door chimed. Vash opened it to find a human standing there, shorter than him by at least a foot, with dark hair pulled back in a practical tail. She wore simple clothing, carried a bag over one shoulder, and looked at him with eyes that were disturbingly calm. Not the nervous darting eyes he expected, just calm, steady, measuring. Commander Vesh, I am Zarn and Shin, your babysitter. She held out her hand in that human greeting gesture. Vesh took it carefully, afraid his claws might scratch her soft skin. Her grip was firm, very firm, almost challenging. Please come in, Kira said, stepping aside. We should warn you, our cubs they are not like other children you may have cared for. Zarn stepped inside, glancing around their quarters with professional efficiency. I have worked with Borgothi spawn who tried to poison me. I have handled Kalari hatchlings who breathed acid. I once spent 3 days with a young Kelvin whose idea of fun was setting things on fire with his mind. Your cubs are Kahari, right? Apex predators, hierarchical species, dominance-based social structure. Yes, Bash said slowly. You have done your research. I always do, Zarn set her bag down. So, here is the deal. Your cubs will test me. They will roar, show teeth, probably try to establish dominance. This is normal. This is healthy. I am not here to break their spirit or make them act like humans. I am here to keep them alive and teach them that strength respects. Strength, does that work for you? Vesh stared at her. This tiny human barely reaching his chest was talking about his warrior cubs like she had already sized them up and found them manageable. Yes, that works, Kira said, sounding as stunned as Vash felt. Good. Go to your dinner thing. I will be here when you get back. Zarnan smiled, and it was not a soft human smile. It had teeth in it. One question, though. If they break something, am I allowed to make them fix it? Absolutely, Vash said. Perfect. We are going to get along just fine. As Vash and Kira left their quarters, Zesh could not shake the feeling that they had just unleashed something on their cubs that their cubs were not prepared for. Behind them, they heard the sleeping quarter door open, heard Zeph's challenging roar, and then startlingly heard a human voice roar back, louder, deeper, more terrifying than any sound a human should be able to make. Vesh and Kira stopped in the corridor, looked at each other, and for the first time in weeks, VH smiled. Maybe, just maybe, this would work. Zarn and Shin stood in the center of the living quarters, watching 3 small Theri cubs circle her like tiny apex predators who had just found prey. And honestly, they were adorable, fluffy, full, oversized paws, big amber eyes that probably melted hearts all over the station. But Zarn had not survived 5 years of Xenopi care by falling for cute. Zeph, the oldest, was the first to make his move. He puffed out his chest, raised his head and let out a roar that would have been impressive if he were not the size of a large house cat. It echoed off the walls, high-pitched but determined. The sound of a cub who had learned that noise meant power. Zornan tilted her head, crossed her arms, and waited. They roared again, louder this time, adding a little growl at the end for emphasis. You done? Zin asked calmly. The cub blinked confused. Adults usually backed away by now. Usually showed submission. Usually did something other than stand there looking bored. Because if you are done, it is my turn. Zarn took a deep breath, dropped her stance slightly, and roared back. It was not a scream. It was not a yell. It was a full-throated, diaphragm-powered roar that came from somewhere deep in her chest. The kind of sound humans made when they forgot they were supposed to be civilized. It rattled the furniture. It made the lights flicker. It contained every ounce of frustration from dealing with entitled alien children who thought being predators meant they did not have to follow rules. All 3 cubs froze. Zeph's ears flattened against his skull. Nala, who had been creeping up from the side with her claws extended, stopped mid-step. Little Rook, the baby, made a small squeaking sound and sat down hard on his fluffy bottom. Zornan smiled sweetly. Good. Now that we have established that I can be louder than you, let us talk about how this evening is going to go. My name is Zornan. You can call me Zarnan, Miss Chin, or Hey you, I do not care, but you will not roar at me, bite me, scratch me, or treat me like prey. Because here is the thing, cubs. I am not prey. I am the predator who eats predators. Understand? Zay tried to salvage his dignity by hissing, showing his tiny fangs. Oh, please. Zarn said, walking over to her bag and pulling out a data pad. I have been hissed at by things that could actually hurt me. You are precious. Do not get me wrong. Absolutely adorable with those little murder mittens, but you are not scary. Not yet. Maybe in 10 years when you hit your growth spurt, but right now you are kittens with attitude problems. We are not kittens, Zeph snarled, his translator picking up his indignant chittering. We are Kthari warriors. You are Kthari cubs who still sleep with stuffed animals. Zarnin corrected, gesturing at the plush toys visible through the open sleeping corridor. I did my homework, Zeph. Your favorite is the blue one shaped like a Quellin. You named it Squishy, so let us drop the warrior routine and figure out how to have fun tonight without anyone filing a complaint. Yeah. Nala had recovered from her shock and decided to try a different approach. She sat down gracefully, grooming her paw with exaggerated disinterest. The universal sign of a cat who was absolutely planning something. Father says humans are weak, soft, easy to break. Your father is half right, Zarnin said cheerfully. Humans are soft. We do not have fur, claws, natural armor, venom, or any of the fun stuff you predator species get. But you know what? We do have spite, stubbornness, and the ability to hold grudges for decades. Plus, I grew up with brothers, 3 of them, all bigger than me. You think you can outstubborn a youngest sibling? Please, I was born into chaos, molded by it. Little Rook, still sitting on the floor, tilted his head. What is a sibling? Family members who share parents like you 3. Zarn crouched down to his level, softening her voice slightly. You are the baby, right? The little one who everyone thinks is too small to cause trouble, so you get away with everything. Rook's eyes widened. How did she know? Because I was the baby too, Zarnin said, reaching out slowly to scratch behind his ear. To her surprise, he leaned into it, purring slightly. And I learned that being underestimated is the best weapon. People do not see you coming. So, yeah, Rook, I know your game. I invented your game. Zay was not ready to give up. He charged at Zern's leg, attempting what was probably supposed to be a tackle, but looked more like an aggressive hug. His claws caught on her pants, and he dangled there, growling. Zernan looked down at him. Really? This is your move? Attacking the ankles? It works on the others. Zay grumbled. The others were not raised by brothers who gave me dead legs every day for 5 years. Zarn reached down, carefully detached Zay from her pants, and held him at eye level. Listen, kid, I respect the effort, good form, decent commitment, but if you want to establish dominance, you need better tactics. I'm biding his amateur hour. Then how do we establish dominance? Nala asked, her curiosity overriding her pride. Zornan sat Zeph down and sat cross-legged on the floor, bringing herself to their level. You do not with me, because I do not play dominance games. I play cooperation games. Here is the new rule, cubs. You respect me. I respect you. You test boundaries. I set them. You act like reasonable beings. I treat you like reasonable beings. You act like feral nightmares. I act like the thing nightmares have nightmares about. Simple, clean. Everybody knows where they stand. The 3 cubs looked at each other, communicating in that silent way children did across all species. What if we do not want to cooperate? Zaf asked. Suspicious? Then you get boring, Zarnin? Zarn said with a shrug. Boring Zarnin makes you sit quietly and read educational materials about proper kid behavior. Boring Zarnin does not play games, tell stories, or teach you the fun stuff. But if you work with me, I will teach you things your parents probably do not know. Human things, sneaky things. Things that will make you the most impressive cubs on this station. That got their attention. What kind of things? Nala asked, leaning forward. Zarn grinned. Well, for starters, I can teach you how to move silently. Humans are persistence hunters. We learn to track prey for days without being detected. I can show you psychological tricks that make adults do what you want without them realizing it. I can teach you strategy games that will make you smarter than every other cub in your age group. But, And this is important, you have to earn it. You have to show me you can handle responsibility. Rook bounced excitedly. I want to learn sneaky human things. Me too, Nala admitted. Zay held out longer, pride wearing with curiosity, but finally he sighed. Fine, but if you are boring, we are going back to Plan A. Which was Zarnan asked, making you cry and run away. Good luck with that, kiddo. Zarnan stood up, brushing off her pants. Now your parents said something about dinner. What do you cubs usually eat? And please tell me it is not live prey because I did not bring any rodents. Dinner started as a test. Naturally, because cubs, regardless of species, were tiny scientists conducting experiments on the structural integrity of adult patients, Zarnan had prepared their meal, some kind of protein mash that looked deeply unappealing, but apparently passed for gourmet cuisine in Thuri culture. She set 3 bowls on the low table, and stepped back, waiting. Zeph picked up his bowl, made eye contact with Zarnan, and very deliberately turned it upside down. The mash splattered across the table in a wet, defiant puddle. Oops, he said, his tone making it clear there was nothing accidental about it. Nala giggled. Rook watched with wide eyes, waiting to see what would happen. Zarn nodded slowly. Okay, cool. So, that is how we are playing this. She walked to the cleaning supply closet, pulled out a cloth, and tossed it to Zay. Clean it up. No, Zay said simply. Yes, Zernan said, matching his tone exactly. You cannot make me. You are absolutely right. I cannot make you. Sarn sat down on the couch, pulling out her data pad. But here is the thing, Z. That mess is going to sit there. It is going to dry. It is going to smell. And when your parents get home, I am going to tell them exactly what happened. How you wasted food, disrespected their home, and refused to take responsibility. And then, and this is the fun part, they are going to handle it. I hear Crary parents have very creative punishments for cubs who dishonor the family. Zeph's ears twitched. You would not try me, kiddo. I have been fired from exactly 0 jobs because I am very good at documentation. I will write a report so detailed your parents will know what time you threw the food, the trajectory, and your facial expression when you did it, complete with video evidence because oh look, your parents have security cameras. Zornan gestured at the small lens in the corner of the room. The cub's confidence cracked slightly. He looked at the mess, then at Zarnan, then at his sisters, or Zarnan said casually. You could clean it up, apologize, and we can try dinner again. This time without the performance art. Your choice. I have all night. 30 seconds of silence passed. A full 30 seconds where Zay options, calculated the risks, and realized he had been outmaneuvered by someone who actually understood consequences. He picked up the cloth. Smart cub. Zarn. And said, not gloating, just stating fact. Nala, Rook, you too hungry or are we doing the food throwing Olympics tonight? I am hungry, Rook said quickly, pulling his bowl closer protectively. Nala studied Zornan with new respect. I will eat. The second attempt at dinner went smoothly, mostly because the cubs were still processing the fact that Zarn had not yelled, not backed down, and definitely had not played by the usual adult rules. She had just existed in the consequences, calm and unbothered until they chose differently. After dinner, the cubs attempted Phase 2 of their chaos protocol, climbing. Crethry were natural climbers, and the station quarters had been modified with reinforced furniture that could handle cubs scaling walls like furry little mountaineers. Zay led the charge, leaping onto a shelf unit and scrambling upward with impressive agility. Nala followed, her claws finding purchase in ways that would make a gecko jealous. Even little Rook managed to haul himself up to the second level, chittering triumphantly. We are up here and you cannot reach us, Zay announced from his perch near the ceiling. What are you going to do now, human? Zarn looked up at them, then at the furniture, then back at the cubs. That is pretty high. You guys are good climbers. The best, Nala preemed. Better than humans, obviously, Zay added. Oh, absolutely, Zornan agreed. Humans are terrible climbers compared to Theri. We do not have claws. Our grip strength is mediocre. And our sense of balance is just okay. You got us beat. No question. The cubs looked pleased with themselves. Of course, Zornan continued, stretching casually. We do have one advantage. What advantage? Rook asked. We cheat. Zarnan walked over to the shelf unit and started climbing. Not scrambling, not using claws, just finding handholds and foot holds with deliberate efficiency. She pulled herself up level by level. Her movements smooth and practiced. The muscle memory of someone who had spent way too much time rock climbing on Earth. The cubs watched in shock as this supposedly soft, clawless human climbed their fortress and pulled herself up to their level. Eisen said, sitting cross-legged on the top shelf. Nice view up here. You can see the whole apartment. Very strategic. I approve. How did you do that? Nulla demanded. Humans are endurance predators. Remember, we do not have to be the fastest or the strongest. We just have to be stubborn enough to keep going until we get where we want to be. Also, I spent 3 years climbing mountains on Earth because I had terrible judgment and thought it was fun. Zarn looked around at their shocked faces. So, what is the plan now? We staying up here all night, or are we going to do something more interesting? Zeph's respect for the human was growing, which was annoying because he had really committed to the whole hating her thing. What kind of interesting? Well, I was thinking we could play a game. Something fun, something that uses those excellent hunting instincts you have been showing off all night? Zarn leaned forward, conspirator ally. Ever play hide and seek? What is hide and seek? Rook asked. Hunting practice for species without fur and claws. Zarnan explained. One person hides, the others hunt them down using tracking skills, environmental awareness, and strategy. Basically, all the things that make very good predators, but in a way that does not destroy your parents' home or get me fired. We are very good at hunting. Nala said confidently. Prove it. You 3 are the hunters. I am the prey. You have 5 minutes to find me. I will hide somewhere in this apartment, and you have to track me down. If you find me in under 5 minutes, you win. If I stay hidden longer than that, I win. Deal. The cubs exchanged glances and Zarn could see the gears turning. This was a challenge, a competition. And cubs loved both of those things. Deal. Zay said. But you have to actually hide. No standing in plain sight. Would not dream of it, Zornan said. All right, close your eyes, count to 60, and come find me. And remember, good hunters are quiet, patient, and strategic. Let us see what you have got. The cubs squeezed their eyes shut and started counting in their chittering language. Zarnan climbed down from the shelf and looked around the apartment, calculating options. She had about 45 seconds before 3 tiny predators came hunting. She moved through the apartment silently, her footsteps careful and deliberate. She avoided the obvious spots, the closets and under beds that children always checked first. Instead, she opened the cleaning supply closet, moved some items around, and wedged herself into the top shelf behind a stack of towels. It was uncomfortable, cramped, and required her to stay completely still, but humans were good at uncomfortable. Humans had evolved to crouch in bushes for hours, waiting for prey to pass by. She could handle 5 minutes. Ready or not, here we come. She heard Zay call out. The hunt began. Zahn listened as the cubs moved through the apartment, their claws clicking on the floor, their excited chittering filling the space. They checked the obvious spots first, just as she predicted. Bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, storage. She heard furniture being moved, cushions being tossed, the sounds of determined hunters who were used to finding things quickly. But minutes passed and they did not find her. Where is she? Nella's frustrated voice carried through the apartment. She has to be here somewhere, Zeph said. Humans are big. They cannot just disappear. Maybe she left. Rook suggested. The door did not open. We would have heard it. Zay countered. She is hiding. We just have to. Think like prey. Where would prey hide? Zarn smiled in her tall cave. Good question, cub. Where would prey hide? She heard them moving more slowly now, more carefully. They were learning, adapting their strategy. This was good. This was exactly what hunting should teach. Wait, Nala said suddenly. Do you smell that? Smell what? Zay asked. Human. It is stronger over here by the cleaning closet. Zarn's smile widened. Clever girl. The closet door opened. She heard sniffing the sound of items being moved. She is in here. Nala whispered. But where? Up, Rook said. Remember, she climbs. Humans can climb. 3 sets of claws scrambled up the closet shelving, and suddenly Zarn was face to face with 3 very proud cubs. Found, you said triumphantly. 4 minutes and 38 seconds. Zarn said, checking her data pad. Not bad at all. You used scent tracking, environmental deduction, and remembered my climbing ability. That is professional level hunting cubs. Your parents would be proud. The cubs beamed. Can we play again? Rook asked eagerly. For the next 2 hours they played hide and seek, evolved into tracking games, which evolved into strategy challenges, which evolved into Zarn, and teaching them basic psychology about reading body language and predicting behavior. The cubs were engaged, learning, and most importantly not destroying anything. By the time their bedtime arrived, all 3 were tired, happy, and significantly less inclined to treat Zarnan like prey. Okay team, time for sleep, Zarnan announced. But we are not tired. Zay protested even as he yawned. Sure you are not, warrior. Come on into your sleeping quarters. Teeth cleaned, claws filed, fur brushed, the whole routine. Zarn herded them toward their room with gentle efficiency. To her surprise, they went. Not happily, but they went. As she tucked them into their sleeping nests, making sure each cub had their preferred stuffed companion. Rook looked up at her with sleepy eyes. Zarn, can you be our babysitter again? If your parents want me back after tonight, sure, Zarnan said, scratching behind his ears. I want you back, Nala mumbled, already half asleep. You're not terrible, Zeph admitted grudgingly. For a human, high praise. Coming from you, Zarn said with a smile. Now sleep. Warriors need rest to stay sharp. She dimmed the lights and left their door slightly open, the way Kira had instructed. In the living area, she cleaned up the evidence of their games, straightened the furniture, and settled onto the couch to wait for the parents to return. Commander Vesh and Kira approached their quarters with the kind of tension usually reserved for disarming explosives. The military dinner had been fine, excellent even, but neither of them had been able to focus. They had spent 3 hours imagining increasingly catastrophic scenarios involving their cubs and the small human they had left in charge. Maybe it went well, Kira said without conviction. Maybe, Bis Reed, equally unconvinced. They had received no emergency calls, which was either a very good sign or a very bad one. The last babysitter had called within 15 minutes. The one before that had made it 37 minutes before requesting immediate extraction. Vash pressed his palm to the door scanner. It slid open with a soft hiss. The apartment was clean, intact. Nothing was on fire, broken, or leaking fluids. The furniture stood where it was supposed to stand. No claw marks on the walls, no overturned storage units, no evidence of the typical cub-related destruction. Zern and Chen sat on their couch reading something on her data pad, looking completely unbothered. She glanced up as they entered, offering a small smile. Hey, how was dinner? She asked as if this were the most normal thing in the universe. It was fine. Kira managed, looking around in confusion. Where are the cubs sleeping? They went down about 40 minutes ago. Zay fought it for a bit, but he was exhausted, so he gave in pretty quickly. Zornan stood stretching slightly. They are good kids, energetic, stubborn, but good. Bess stared at her. They are sleeping. All 3 of them voluntarily. Well, voluntarily after I explained that sleep was non-negotiable and that arguing would just make bedtime take longer. We had a good evening though. Played some games, worked on their tracking skills, had some interesting conversations about the difference between strength and intelligence. Zarn picked up her bag. Oh, and Zeph spilled his dinner deliberately as a test, but he cleaned it up after we discussed consequences. No big deal. No big deal. Vash repeated slowly. Kira moved toward the sleeping quarters, peeking through the half-open door. All 3 cubs were curled in their nests, breathing deeply, completely unconscious. Zeph had his blue quail toy clutched to his chest. Nala had somehow twisted herself into a pretzel shape. Rook was sprawled on his back, tiny paws in the air. They were actually sleeping peacefully without property damage as a precursor. How? Kira asked, turning back to Zarn. How did you do this? The Vorgothi warrior could not handle them for 10 minutes. You had them for 4 hours and they are come. Zarn shrugged. I spoke their language. You speak Thuri? Vesh asked, confused. No, I speak Predator. Big difference. Zarnan shouldered her bag. Your cubs were not being bad, Commander. They were testing boundaries like any apex predator offspring would. They roared. I roared back. They tried to establish dominance. I showed them I do not play that game. They tried to break rules. I let them face consequences. And then once we got past all the posturing, we actually had fun. They are smart cubs. Really smart. You should be proud. Vesh felt something warm spreading through his chest. Pride, yes, but also relief so intense it almost hurt. You are saying they behaved. I am saying they acted like cubs. And I treated them like cubs. Not victims, not monsters, just young predators learning their place in the world. Zarn walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, one thing. Zeph is going to ask you about persistence hunting tomorrow. I might have told them some stories about human hunting strategies. And now he is fascinated by the concept of tracking prey for days. Sorry if I created a monster. No, that is fine, Kira said quickly. Educational even. Cool. Well, if you need me again, you have my contact info. The cubs already asked if I could come back, so I guess I passed whatever test they were running. Zornan smiled. And again, it had that edge to it, that hint of teeth. Have a good night, Commander. Officer Kira, your cubs are great. Seriously. She left, the door sliding shut behind her. Vesh and Kira stood in their intact apartment, surrounded by evidence that their children had not only survived, but thrived under human supervision and tried to process what had just happened. Did she just say she roared at our cubs? Vesh asked quietly. I think so. Yes, and they listened apparently. They stood in silence for another moment. I need to see the security footage, Vesh said suddenly, moving to the wall console. I need to see what actually happened here tonight. Kira joined him as he pulled up the internal camera feeds, scrolling back to when Zarn had arrived. They watched in fascination as their cubs tried their usual intimidation tactics, watched Say puff up and roar his chow, and then they watched Zarn roar back. The sound was muffled through the speakers, but the effect was clear. The cubs froze. Their body language shifted instantly from aggressive to uncertain. And Zarn, this tiny human who barely massed a third of what a full G-grown Theri weighed, stood there like she had just won a dominance contest without even trying. By the ancestors, Kira whispered. She actually did it. They watched the rest of the evening unfold. Watched the dinner incident, the climbing competition, the hunting games. Watched their cubs, their supposedly uncontrollable terrors, playing cooperatively with a human babysitter. Learning, engaging, actually behaving like civilized beings. She understands them, Vesh said almost to himself. She understands that they need structure, not softness, respect, not coddling. She treated them like young warriors, not damaged goods. We are hiring her permanently, Kira announced. I do not care what it costs. We are hiring her. Agreed, Vesh said immediately. A soft sound from the sleeping quarters drew their attention. Rook had woken up, probably sensing his parents' presence. The small cub padded out, rubbing his eyes, dragging his stuffed animal behind him. Papa, Mama, he mumbled sleepily. Yes, little one, we are home, Kira said softly, scooping him up. Did you have a good evening? Zarnan is the best, Rook declared, nuzzling into his mother's fur. She taught us sneaky human things. And she climbed all the way to the top shelf, even without claws. And she found the best hiding spot in the whole apartment. And she said, "Warriors need to be smart, not just strong. And that strength without intelligence is just noise." Vash and Kira exchanged glances over their cub's head. "She said that?" "Did she?" Vash asked gently. "And she said, 'We are smart cubs and that you would be proud of us.'" Rook yawned hugely, showing all his tiny teeth. "Can she come back tomorrow?" "We will see," little Hunter Kira said, carrying him back to his nest. "But yes, I think she will be coming back." 3 weeks later, Zern and Chin had become something of a legend on Station Kepler 7. Not the quiet, respectful kind of legend that people whispered about in reverent tones. No, Zernan was the loud, slightly chaotic kind of legend that made parents grateful and cubs simultaneously excited and terrified. She had become the most requested child care provider in the station's history. Commander Vesh sat in the station's commissary, watching Zarn work her magic on not just his 3 cubs, but also Officer Thrane's twins, Commander Zyla's daughter, and a particularly rambunctious young Quellen, whose parents had begged for help. 7 children, 5 different species, all playing cooperatively in the designated recreation area, while Zarn supervised with the calm efficiency of someone herding very dangerous cats. "I still do not understand how she does it," Officer Thra said, sitting across from VS with his midday meal. The massive Crothery looked baffled. "My twins made for babysitters quit in 2 months. She has had them for 3 weeks. And they ask when Miss Sarnan is coming back. They ask politely." "It is the roaring," Bess said, taking a drink. "She established dominance on day 1 and never let it slip." "It is not just the roaring," Commander Zyla added, joining their table with her tray. The sleek female Theri had been skeptical about hiring a human until her daughter came home using words like strategy and patience. "She teaches them, really teaches them, not just how to behave, but why they should behave. Makessa told me that strength without intelligence is just noise." Where does a 7-year-old learn to say things like that? "From a human who understands predators better than we do," Thus said simply. They watched as one of Thra's twins, a cub named Jack, started to get aggressive with the Quill and Child over a toy. Before any adult could intervene, Zarnan was there crouching between them. "Jax, what is the rule?" Her voice carried across the recreation area, not loud, but absolutely firm. "Strength respects strength," Jax muttered. "And what does bullying show?" The cub looked at his feet. "That I am not strong, just scared." "Exactly. So, what are you going to do differently?" A pause. "Then, can we share the toy?" "Take turns." "Good problem solving." "Yes, you can take turns. 5 minutes each. I will time it." And Jax apologized to Quillvin for grabbing. "Sorry, Quillin," Jax said, actually, clear his throat, meaning it. The Quill and Child, who had been ready to use his defensive quills, relaxed. "It is okay. You can go first." Zarn patted both of them on the head and moved on, already addressing Nala, who was trying to climb the wall panels again. "She treats them like adults in training, not children, to be controlled," Zyla observed. "It is refreshing. Most caregivers either cuddle them or fear them. She does neither. She respects them," Vesh corrected. "There is a difference." Across the recreation area, Little Rook had convinced 2 other cubs to play the tracking game Zarn had taught them. They were hunting a toy she had hidden somewhere in the play structures, using scent and logic to narrow down the location. Real skills disguised as play, the human way of teaching. "My command staff wants to hire her for team building exercises," Thra said suddenly. They heard about her strategy games and think she could teach tactical thinking to new recruits. "She is a babysitter, not a military trainer," Vesh said, though even he could hear the doubt in his own voice. "Is she, though?" Zyla asked. "Think about it, Commander. She teaches strategy, discipline, respect for hierarchy, cooperative tactics, and psychological warfare. She just teaches it to cubs instead of soldiers. The principles are the same." Zarn had moved to the center of the play area and clapped her hands twice, a sharp sound that got every cub's attention immediately. All right, team. We have 15 minutes before pickup time. Who wants to play the cooperation game? She held up a complex puzzle toy that required multiple participants. This one needs at least 4 people to solve, and you have to work together. No dominance displays, no fighting, just teamwork. Ready? 7 children of 5 different species shouted their agreement and rushed to help. Vash watched his cubs work alongside others, sharing ideas, taking turns, building something together instead of fighting over territory. Zay was explaining his strategy to one of the twins. Nala was helping the Quellan child reach a high peak. Rook was cheering everyone on with boundless enthusiasm. They were learning to be part of something bigger than themselves. They were learning to be warriors who could also be teammates. She is teaching them what the military spends years trying to instill, Vesh said quietly. Unit cohesion, respect for different strengths, the understanding that a team is stronger than any individual. Later that evening, as Vesh reviewed tactical reports in his quarters, he found himself thinking about Sarnan's words about meeting cubs at their level, about respecting strength while teaching boundaries, about the difference between control and discipline. The door chimed. Kira entered smiling. Zarn said yes to dinner this weekend? She said, and I quote, "If we are cooking, she is in. She is tired of station rations." Vesh laughed. Of course she is. Humans and their food preferences. She also said she is bringing dessert, something called brownies. Apparently it is an earth food that cubs universally love, and she wants to see if Kthori cubs are any different. From the sleeping quarters, they heard the cubs settling down for the night, their voices carrying through the walls. Do you think Zarn would teach us to roar like she does? Nala asked. Humans cannot really roar, Zay said. That was just, I do not know, human magic or something. It was not magic, Rook said wisely. It was confidence. Zarn is confident because she knows her strength. That is what makes her roar. So scary. I want to be confident like Zornan when I grow up. Nala said. Me too, Zay agreed. Me 3, Rook added. Vesh and Kira stood in the doorway listening to their cubs aspire to be like a human. A year ago, they would have been horrified. Krathari cubs should aspire to be like Kthiri warriors, not soft aliens from a backwater planet. But now Vesh understood that strength came in many forms. And sometimes the strongest person in the room was the one who roared back when everyone else expected submission. The one who looked at apex predators and saw children who needed guidance. The one who was soft on the outside but absolutely unyielding on the inside. That weekend, Zorn and Chin sat at their family table, eating Kthari food without complaint, telling stories about Earth that made the cubs laugh and treating Vesh and Kira like equals rather than employers. And when Zay tried to sneak extra dessert, she caught him with that uncanny human awareness and said simply, "Nice try, warrior, but I see everything." Zay sat back down, properly chastised but grinning. Because he had tested the boundary and the boundary had held just like it should. Just like it always would with Zarnan around the human who roared back and in doing so taught an entire station full of apex predators what real strength looked